So it is a Saturday morning, and I'm going to a camp out, and I would really like to have a beer on tap. It's only got about 10 days before then. I'm not sure what I could do. Bike to the rescue. Well, hello, this is Brent from Cascade's Homebrew. The goal of my channel is really kind of covering easy homebrewing, making great beer with simple processes, brewing the bag, small batches, and experimental type stuff. If you like that type of content, go ahead, click the subscribe, click the notification, because that does... What does the notification do again? There's the all personalized. What is that? No, I don't click that either. So. But clicking the subscribe button at least will get me into your feed when the new videos come out like this. So today what we're doing is brewing a Kvike Pale Ale. It's basically a similar beer that my walkthrough video from that I posted a month or two ago. That recipe turned out pretty good. I hear the neighbor's air conditioning kicking on, so there might be some background noise here. Basically, we're doing the Kvike Pale Ale recipe from that. The only tweaks, using different, dry version of Voss versus the Omega liquid yeast, swapping out the crystal for some Munich. I think just kind of lighten up some of the sweetness. And then you swapping, going with Citra and Cascade to kind of double up or triple up on the citrusy character versus I think last time it was a mosaic citrus beer. All right, well, I need to get some brewing. I'm not sure which style you want to call this beer. Call it a hazy pale ale, call it American pale ale. I just call it a pretty good beer. The batch size for this one was 5.5 gallons or 21 liters into the fermenter with a 73% overall efficiency, targeting a 1048 original gravity or a final gravity of 10,009 for a 5.1% ABV. The IBUs are fairly low at 35, and the SRM is also a fairly light color at 5. My target water profile is up on the screen. The main drivers here are the sulfate and chloride numbers. I started off with my standard pale ale profile as my base, but then I target a sulfate value that's just a little lower and a chloride value that's a little higher than that profile. I still have a 2.7 sulfate to chloride ratio. I might play around with tweaking that ratio, maybe closer to a 1-to-1 ratio. The additions will vary based on your source water, but for my tap water, I need 7.7 grams of gypsum, 1.5 grams of calcium chloride, and 23 milliliters of phosphoric acid to try to target a mash pH of 5.3. I always add a little Campden to remove chlorine and chloramines. The grain bill for this recipe is pretty straightforward. 80% of a pale malt. In this case, I'm using the extra pale from Muntons, but any American 2-row or English pale malt should work fine. 10% flaked oats. I'm just using Quaker that I bought at the grocery store. And 10% of a Munich 15. In this case, I'm using Avangard. Well, actually, I ran out of the Munich 15, so I ended up using a little bit of Munich 6 from Weyermann. After mixing in the grain well, I wrap up the kettle in this sleeping bag for a 60-minute mash. My target mash temperature is 152 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 66.7 degrees Celsius. I find this to be good general-purpose mash temperature for many styles. I will come back at the 30-minute mark to give the mash a good stir and also take a pH reading. Once the mash is complete, I remove the bag of grains. I use a pulley, which makes the job super easy. I pull out the grain bag slowly to give the liquid in the bag a chance to drain out. Otherwise, it would just drip down the outside of my kettle and make a big mess. I then let gravity do most of the work of draining as I heat the wort in the kettle up to boiling temperatures. Some people advocate aggressive squeezing of the bag to eke out a few extra gravity points. For me, I'd rather avoid squeezing a hot, wet, sticky bag of grains, so I've tuned my water volume and target efficiency toward my easy process. As the wort came up to a boil, I did nothing. When I formulated this recipe, I'd planned for a 30-minute boil with a 30-minute hop addition. Well, at this point, the 7 gallons of pre-boil volume made me realize that I had forgot to change the recipe in Beersmith from my default of 60 minutes to 30 minutes. Since the water volumes were calculated for a 1-hour boil, I just let the wort boil for 30 minutes before the first hop addition. The 30-minute boil mark, I add 0.4 ounces or 11 grams of Columbus, which gives about 17 IBUs. With 10 minutes left in the boil, I add, oh, that's hot! Let's see that again. My goal was to add 1 Whirlfloc tablet and 2.2 grams of yeast nutrient. Well, it seems that the yeast nutrient kind of caked in the bottom of the jar, so I tried to rinse it out and, well, at least hopefully some of the nutrient made it into the wort. At the 5-minute boil mark, I add half an ounce or 14 grams of Citra, give 7.7 IBUs, and another half an ounce or 14 grams of Cascade, which gives about 3 IBUs. I'm still playing around with my best technique for doing a Whirlpool with my limited equipment, but I do find that Whirlpool editions add a little bit more flavor than just flame out editions. In this case, I chilled the batch down to just close to 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 degrees Celsius. I added half an ounce or 14 grams of Citra, another half an ounce or 14 grams of Cascade. They had a little bit of IBUs, but not too much. So what I did was every 5 minutes for 20 minutes, I came back and gave the pot a good stir and then put the lid back on. I chilled the wort down to pitching temps with my immersion chiller, though for Quaker yeast this is still pretty warm. I then transferred into my fermenter fermenter. If you watched some of my other 5-gallon brew day videos, you might recall some issues I had trying to pour directly into the fermenter. For this batch, I swapped back to my tried and true auto siphon transfer. Oh, though I'm always trying something new, so this time I tried transferring through the sanitized hop bag. I thought it might be a good way to avoid getting hop matter into the fermenter. Well, the bag was a bit too fine and clogged up pretty quickly, so I had to bypass it. I won't do that again, but it was a good try. For this batch, I'm using a new technique to avoid oxygen exposure during dry hopping. I will explain the process more here in a second, but basically I'm adding the dry hops at yeast pitch time, but I'm suspending them in a bag at the top of the fermenter using magnets. I was very happy with how this worked out. I used 1 packet of Lallemand Voss yeast. This batch ended up fermenting about 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 days before being done. I then let the batch cool down to near room temperature, and then I lowered the dry hops down into the beer for 2 more days. Then I cold crashed the beer to near freezing temperatures for another 2 days before kegging. That gave me a few days to force carbonate before serving at the campout. Alright, it feels a little weird pitching my yeast so quick with the beer still warm, but it's that time. Alright, so I got 1 pack of the Lallemand Voss Quaker yeast. Alright, so I'm trying something a little different today with fermentation. So what I did was I bought, based on some information on Homebrew Talk, bought a lid. I cut a hole in it so that I could attach a gas post. Actually, this is actually a liquid post. Drilled, I believe it was a 1/2 inch hole. It's in there nice and snug. Just snug that on there. So I've got one that's a gas post and one's a liquid post. But basically this is going to go on the top of the fermenter. I'm going to put this going into the liquid out to the tube to the bottom. So CO2 will fill from fermentation. We'll continually mix, pushing out, dilute down the oxygen, hopefully push it out. I've got this spunding gauge, which initially I'm going to leave it very low, and I want to just get a little bit of pressure in the keg just so that there's a little bit of CO2 when I cold crash or reduce the temperature, so that it kind of helps with suck back. I actually got this balloon on here as well. So I've got a set of some magnets. They're pretty high powerful. So I've got a couple stacks of 2 of them. I can smell that yeast. Smells yeasty. I've got my hops here, and then I've got a bag here. Alright, and I've not done this before, so this may go well or it may be a disaster. These are my dry hops. Alright. I think that's going to work pretty well. Right up. Alright, so before I move this into the fermentation chamber, I just want a quick view of the setup here. So I've got a heat wrap that I'll use to seedling mat, help keep it warm. So we've got the hops. There's 2 ounces of hops, 1 ounce of Citra, 1 ounce of Cascade. They're up there in the bag. These magnets holding it in place. Hopefully the hops will stay up above the kreuzen, even though the bag itself is kind of drooping down in. But I have this nice big bag. I'd kind of hoped I'd be able to kind of roll it up, but it didn't quite work out. And then I've got this lid, a solid lid for the fermonster. Drilled a 1/2-inch hole for a post. In this case, it's a liquid post. So I'm using a liquid to black for beer, running into a balloon that I can use for helping suck back. Even though the keg itself probably would be fine. So go ahead and this should run CO2 down into the keg through the post in the bottom. Not completely pushing out all the oxygen, but enough. The theory is that enough CO2 is produced that it will get the level of air oxygen in the keg down to an acceptable limit. Maybe even better than you're purging, filling it with water and purging it with commercial CO2. Then over here right now I've just got this spunding valve. I may swap this out just for a tube going into blow off. Yes, this thing is a beast. So we're about 6 hours after I pitched the yeast. Really was about maybe an hour or two, and I was starting to see some signs of bubbles. So right now, I swapped this over. I inflated the balloon, so it's all inflated. I swapped over to just a tube down and blow off. So it's been bubbling away down here. I took a gravity reading on day 3 to confirm that I was at a reasonable final gravity. I then moved the fermenter into this cool room to chill down overnight before I was going to dry hop. On the morning of day 4, I lowered the dry hops down into the beer. I dry hopped for 2 days at room temperature, then cold crashed the beer for 2 days at near freezing. At this point, most of the yeast had settled to the bottom of the fermenter, and it was time to do a closed transfer into the keg that was purged during fermentation. So the setup we have here then is beer is going out the spigot, down the line, through the filter to get any little hop debris, into the post down, so it's running directly down into the bottom of the keg. We've got a return then that is just the tube that I was using for my purging the keg blow-off-ish kind of tube. This balloon that was on there was providing a little bit of CO2 to prevent suckback. So the line goes up into the top to that gas post to fill the headspace with CO2 as the keg fills. So it's a continuous loop with 0 oxygen exposure, or at least very minimal oxygen exposure. Seems like it's running pretty fast, so it should just take a few minutes. And if we look back here, so right now the bag that had the hot bag, it's kind of the magnet's toward the bottom there in the bag. I can see it floating a little bit there. All right, I'm not positive how well this will go. We're going to try to harvest some yeast. So I went ahead and swirled this up a little bit, raised the hot bag up. Right now I'm going to try. Get some slurry. I think it's coming okay. I think the hot bag kept a lot of the hops from getting into. So in the past, I typically have not wanted to harvest yeast from dry hop beers because you end up with a lot of hop chunks. All right. So now we got 2 little jars, some Voss that should be plenty of yeast for several batches. After about 2 days at 30 psi, I lowered the CO2 pressure down and then poured a glass for evaluation. Alright, so it is time to try the pale ale and see how it turned out. So today is Wednesday, and I wanted to get in a tasting because tomorrow I'm going to pack up this keg and take it to a camp out. And I don't know if I will have some beer when I come home or not. Hopefully people will like it enough that they drink it up and I have an empty keg, and that'll be my reward. So I want to get a quick tasting in. Let's look initial. It's a beautiful looking beer. It's got a really nice color. It's still got quite a bit of haze, whether it's very young, whether that haze would stick around, but hopefully you can see. I know some of my prior videos from this lighting, it looks really nice from my side, and then it looked a little darker on the screen. But I'll have some pictures. It's a beautiful light color from my view. This beer, I had kegged it, cold crashed it for 2 days, kegged it, kept it at a high pressure for 2 days, I think 30 psi, and then it's been about 2 days at serving pressure. Let's go in. Aroma, just a lot of hop flavor, a lot of citrus, maybe grapefruity, lemon, maybe a touch of lemony. Because I know it's a Citra, Cascade, and Voss, so I'm looking for those flavors. But they really pop out. It's got a lot of nice hop flavor. Again, we talked about appearance. I had swapped out Crystal for Munich in this one. And it's a darker Munich, so it's almost a little kind of paler color than I had expected. We go in for flavor. Again, just reinforces what I get on the aroma. Just a nice, bright, citrusy, some orange. I would say lemon, maybe some grapefruit. Maybe there's a little more, grapefruit on the aroma than on the flavor. This is not a good big grapefruit fan personally, but it's got a subtle grain background that I think comes from the Munich malt. Again, this was, I think, 10% Munich, 10% Oats, 80% raw 2-row. A simple grain bill, but it's got just enough of grain complexity that makes that part really nice. The last batch when I used Crystal, I thought maybe it was a little sweet, so I wanted to maybe lighten that up. So I went with the Munich. The only difference with this one was also fermented with the Lallemand Voss, versus over my prior Voss batches have all been made with the Omega Voss. I mean, overall impressions, I'm extremely happy with the beer. It's very young, so I'm trying to. Does it still have some hop astringency? That'll clear out. If it does, it's very subtle. It's a very good drinking beer, and I think that's the one thing I've really been impressed with my Kvike beers. They've all been Voss. They ferment fast and furious, so you can get them in the keg quicker. Saves you a week there, or maybe even more. But they turn over very quickly, and they're very quickly a very nice drinkable beer. So this one's going to be on tap at a camp out. Less than I think 12 days from brew day, and I'm pretty happy with it. 12 days from brew day, I want to drink more of this beer. And I'm hoping people like it at the campground, and I'm hoping give me a reason to brew another batch of it. But so I'm going to wrap it up. This is the tasting here. I don't want to drag on too much, but if you're interested in brewing this batch, if you're interested in brewing the recipe that I put out prior that had crystal malt in my 2.5 gallon brew in the bag walkthrough, they're both really nice beers. This particular one with the Citra Cascade to kind of really push that citrus flavor, versus the other one, which was a Mosaic and Citra, had a little bit more kind of fruit character, I guess, that kind of ripe tropical mango-y kind of flavor. Both wonderful beers, very, very, very flavorful, easy drinking. It's a 5%-ish beer. Just a wonderful drinking beer. Again, my name is Brent. This is Cascade's Homebrew. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, please go ahead and subscribe, share it with your friends, hit that notification bell, get a notification when I post something new. In the meantime, maybe take some of the things you've learned, especially with dry hopping and avoiding cold side oxidation, and just get out there and let's build some great beer.